Metamorphosis in frog. The development of an organism may be direct or indirect. In direct development, the young one is in the miniature form of the adult. Whereas in indirect development, the egg hatches into larva, which is different from the adult ecologically, physiologically, biochemically, and morphologically. After a short period, the larva is transformed into an adult. Life cycle of frog. Frogs lay their eggs on water. Some of them die and some of them hatch. After a short time, the baby frogs develop a tail and they look like fish. They are called tadpoles. Shortly after hatching, the tadpole feeds on the yolk of the egg. After a few days, the tadpole can swim around and eat algae. Tadpole gradually develops teeth which help it to chew food. Tiny legs starts developing on the tadpole's body. It begins to look more like an adult frog instead of a fish. After a few weeks, the tail disappears completely. The hands and feet become stronger and longer. The adult frog mate and return to water to lay eggs. Metamorphosis. The transformation of larva into an adult constitutes radical changes. The radical changes which convert a larva into an adult constitute metamorphosis. In frog, the egg hatches into a larva which is called as tadpole. The tadpole appears like a fish. It develops limbs and becomes a froglet. Then the tail resorbs. Finally, it turns into an adult frog. The changes undergone by the tadpole can be divided into three groups. They are ecological changes, morphological changes, physiological and biochemical changes. Ecological changes. The tadpole is an aquatic larva, but the adult is a terrestrial living being. So, there is a transformation from aquatic to terrestrial life. The tadpole is herbivorous, whereas the adult is carnivorous. During metamorphosis, the herbivorous tadpole is transformed into carnivorous adult. Morphological changes. Based on the type of changes that take place on the tadpole, they are grouped into two categories. They are progressive changes and regressive changes. Progressive changes. Certain structures develop and become functional only during metamorphosis. These changes are called progressive changes. The limbs develop progressively and undergo differentiation. The middle ear develops. The tympanic membrane and the tympanic cartilage also develop. The eyes protrude out and they develop eyelids and the nictitating membrane. The tongue develops to capture insects from distance. The heart becomes three-chambered. In tadpoles, the intestine is spirally coiled. During the transformation from herbivorous to carnivorous, the intestine becomes shortened and straight. The pronephros of the tadpole is replaced by the mesonephros. The function of the lungs is intensified. Regressive changes. Some structures of the tadpole, which are not essential for the adult, degenerate and disappear. These constitute regressive changes. The tail is completely resorbed. The fin folds are completely resorbed. The length of the cloacal tube is reduced. The gills are resorbed. The gill clefts are closed. The lateral line sense organ disappears. Ventral suckers disappear. Physiological and biochemical changes. The tadpole is amonotelic and the adult frog is ureotelic. The urea is synthesized in a cyclic reaction called urea cycle. This cycle requires some enzymes. During metamorphosis, the quantity of these enzymes increase steadily. As metamorphosis proceeds, there is a steady increase in the amount of serum albumin in the blood. During metamorphosis, uptake of oxygen increases. Some tissues disappear and new tissues are synthesized. A number of enzymes are involved in the dissolution of tail. The enzymes increase their concentration, and the most impressive increase is shown by cathepsin, an enzyme which digests protein. Hemoglobin. Hemoglobin of tadpole binds with oxygen more readily than the hemoglobin of frog. Hemoglobin in tadpole does not contain cysteine, while hemoglobin in frog contains cysteine. So cysteine is added to the hemoglobin during metamorphosis. Digestive enzymes. Tadpole is herbivorous and adult frog is carnivorous. The carnivorous diet contains more proteins. There is an enzymatic change to digest a high protein diet. There is an increase in the activity of pepsin and trypsin which digest proteins. Visual pigments. In the rods of retina, two kinds of pigments are found, namely rhodopsin, which is red pigment, and porphyropsin, which is purple pigment. Rhodopsin is found in terrestrial and marine vertebrates, whereas porphyropsin is found in freshwater fishes. Tadpole has porphyropsin as a freshwater fish has. This changes during metamorphosis, and the pigment in the adult frog is now rhodopsin like a terrestrial vertebrate. Hormones. The initial signal for metamorphosis is given by hypothalamus. It contains certain specialized nerve fibers called neurosecretory nerve fibers. The nerve fibers secrete a chemical substance called neurosecretion. It contains a factor called thyrotropin releasing factor, which is transported to the pituitary gland. The thyrotropin releasing factor of neurosecretion stimulates the pituitary gland to secrete another hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone acts on the thyroid gland to secrete thyroxine. This hormone acts on the tissues directly, causing the degeneration of some cells and stimulating the growth and differentiation of others. The importance of thyroid gland and thyroxine in metamorphosis is proved by some experiments. When powdered thyroid glands of sheep are fed to frog tadpoles, they metamorphose early. When a thyroid gland is removed from the young tadpoles, they fail to metamorphose. The thyroidless tadpoles continue to grow. The maximum length of the normal tadpole is about 60 mm, but a thyroidless tadpole grows to a length of about 123 mm. When a thyroidless tadpole is fed with dried thyroid gland, it proceeds to metamorphose. A thyroidless tadpole can be stimulated to undergo metamorphosis by rearing the tadpole in water containing powdered thyroid gland. Thus, a tadpole develops into a frog by the process of metamorphosis, which includes the ecological, morphological, physiological, and biochemical changes.